pottery is just for women and children. I don't know, it's just not really my thing. That's what a lot of people believe, so let's prove them wrong. In this video we'll do some awesome manly pottery. First we have to prepare our wedging board to avoid the clay from sticking to the surface. We do this by just duct taping some fabric to a normal board. We also need clay slurry in order to connect multiple pieces of clay. This can be made easy just by crunching down some already dried small pieces of the clay we are going to use. We also mix it with water, and when we have the consistency of curd, we know we are finished. Now we can start with working with the actual clay. At first we have to net it a bit in order to remove possible air bubbles and get a feeling for it and see how it deforms under stress and so on. The clay I'm using has a fine kamet portion of 25% by the way, with 0.5mm grain. It's quite difficult to work with, I wouldn't recommend it for beginners though. Now we can finally start with our first piece, a simple plate. We start by using the rolling pin to create an even surface. Then we apply cling film to avoid sticking and to make sure that we can remove the piece when it's dried for sure. After pressing it into the mold, we can remove the excess just with a toothpick. Wow, what a special tool! Then we can smooth the edges with moistened fingers. That's also very good to get a feeling on how the clay deforms and so on. By the way, normally I do the pottery part in the kitchen because that's just way more comfortable with all the tools and so on. But in my kitchen the light is really bad, so I'll stay at the workbench. That was our first piece. Easy, isn't it? We just have to wait till it's dry and then we can easily remove it from the plate. But what use does a plate have without a mug? We will try to recreate this historic item from the late 13th century with a height from 16 and a diameter of 9 centimeters. After cutting out the components and giving them a quick test fitting, we can start to combine them. In order to do that, we first have to roughen both of the connecting areas up with a knife, toothpick or fork. After that's done, we coat them with the clay slurry and gently press them together. We don't cut the side parts straight from top to bottom, but in a small mitre for a larger connecting area. I also don't cut it straight from top to bottom to create the tighter middle part, as you can see in our template. While the gap is still wet, we can't work on the shape efficiently. That's why we bring our attention to the edge and deburr it with our wet fingers like we did with the plate. After roughly 5 minutes, we can attach the handle. First we roll a piece of clay in our hands, and then we attach the top part as usual, and the lower part can just be smeared on with a bit of slurry. Because the handle is quite heavy and the clay of the mug is still wet, we have to support it before we can refine the final shape. Let's be honest, our mug maybe isn't perfect, but neither was the original, and therefore it's even more authentic. And don't forget, there are no mistakes, just happy little accidents. And after it's getting dark, you had your third beer and nobody will notice it anyway. Wait, it's getting dark? That means we need a light source, like this oil lamp from the 16th century, with a height, length and depth of 12 centimeters. And if you want to take a closer look at my sources, follow the Pinterest link in the comments. And when you're down there, don't forget to share, like and subscribe. And if you want to support this channel even more, follow me on Patreon or give a donation via PayPal. That helps out a lot and will motivate me to make more content. Let's continue. So let's start by making 2 small bowls and a cylinder. The upper one is a bit smaller. That's why I form the rim by bending the base upwards. But because it's quite thin, I have to thicken the handle a bit by adding more clay. On the lower bowl I add a roll on top of the edge, and because of the large connecting surface, I don't need the slurry and can form a strong connection just by smearing them together. For the cylinder between the 2 bowls, I cut out a square, and this time I got to use the slurry again, but that should be easy by now. The same procedure has to be used to combine the 3 parts now, and don't forget to make a hole in the bottom part of the cylinder, because if you would have an air chamber, your item would explode in the kiln, damaging other pieces as well. So don't forget that. That hole is very important. In the end, we just add a rig to make sure it doesn't deform before it's dry. Let's face it, at some point at the party beer just won't do the trick anymore, so we have to switch to high percentage alcohol. That's why I made this flask, which was inspired by a piece that was created between 13 and 1450, has a height of 18, a width of 15 and a depth of 13 centimeters. If that doesn't scream whiskey, I don't know what is. I start with pressing 2 pieces into a small bowl, similar to what we did with the plate at the beginning. Then I build up the sides, for which I have to use 2 strips, because the scope is way larger than I thought. Of course, every part has to be connected with the method of Professor Dr. Clay Fanslury. I'm not satisfied with the still visible transitions though, and that's why I add small snippets of clay. In order to avoid deforming while attaching the front part, I placed it in the shape-giving bowl again. After that's done, it's time for the cylinder mouthpiece. I didn't cut the hole for that as long as possible, because after that's done, air could escape and the flask could deform again. Much more easy, and it's nearly impossible to reverse that, because you can't press against it from the inside. So let's attach the handles before that. Now that we are done with the main pottery part, our pieces need to get fired. Therefore, I got in touch with the next pottery shop and they charge like $5 per kilogram. So it's for free, nearly. And they also do the glazing, which needs to be done for actual water resistance, but that's something you just can't do at home because on the transportation process it would get scrapped off right away. Speaking of which, you carefully wrap your pieces with newspaper and put them next to each other into a cardboard box. For you 6 seconds, for me 6 weeks have passed now and my new microphone arrived, so let's just update the audio really quick and I hope you can hear a difference because otherwise I've wasted a lot of money. Be it as it is, normally it would have been just 3 weeks, but some things changed. I wasn't sure about the glazing, we tried different ones and I didn't like them so much. So I decided to go without glazing after the lady at the pottery shop told me that actually it isn't necessary. What baffled me, because that means I told you some bullshit. Well, enjoy the revealing shots now. When I tested whether this beautiful piece is watertight, I was disappointed because it isn't. As you can see, we've got a very tiny crack here, and I think that happened while drying because it was quite wet at that point, and when it dries it loses volume, and therefore this tiny crack has formed, and now it's too late for glazing. I think that would have prevented this. I think I'll try to fix it with beeswax now. And by the way, if you want to see another option on how you can make something medieval authentic to transport a larger amount of liquid, take a look at my last tutorial about the production of a medieval leather bottle. I think it's beautiful. See you there and till the next video then. Bye bye. Thanks for listening so long, by the way.